Hello, this is John Peters, and today on the book review I'll be talking to Graham Sclater, UK author and music publisher and also a scriptwriter.
Hello, Graham.
Hi JP, nice to be with you.
And you as well. It's a bit cold now, isn't it?
It is cold and wet. Oh, it's lashing down here at the moment.
The books that we're covering this month, we're going to look back over 3 books that we've featured during the year, aren't we?
That's right, yeah, and I think you and I have chosen the same ones, which is great, really. I mean, when you think we've done probably 11 or 10 or 11 this year, including Love Shack, of course. So, yeah, I think it's good that we've got the same 3. So, the first one I have is Borderline by Hilary Custance Green. This is an unusual book because it's about a lady called Grace who's searching on the internet for ways to die. The way the book's set, you think, well, why is she doing this? And it gradually unfolds that she's lonely and very unhappy and not particularly well. She finds this site on the internet run by a gentleman called Daniel who really says he'll take a dozen people across Europe into Slovenia for 21 days. And at the end of that period, they can decide whether they want to go across the border into a country where it is legal to die or to change their lives. And throughout the 21 days, initially they don't talk to each other. They eventually get friendly. They break down into camp, as things always do. She actually finds one of the guys in the group. She falls in love with him, and the whole thing takes on a whole new sort of look, really. The deal at the end is how many people are actually going to cross that border. And that's the sort of the final episode, the last chapter of the book. But how she sort of finds these people, and the guy actually running it, he actually does go across on the border because he also wants to die. It's beautifully written, and it covers Slovenia as it was many years ago. It's a travel log, but it's a travel log with a difference because the games, they're laughing, they actually all come out of themselves. It's something that none of them actually expected to happen, and it demonstrated to each of them that they all had something to live for, although some decided not to continue, but several of them did actually say, I don't want to die anymore, because their lives had changed. And I think it's absolutely fantastic how that story unfolded, and it was a surprise at the end to see that one of the characters who was there basically driving them around actually wanted to do that. So yeah, very thought-provoking, nicely written. I did actually meet Hilary back in February when she was at a launch, really, if you like, in London. She's a lovely lady. She's written a couple of other books, but it's a great book, and it's a good read for anyone who obviously likes to read books, but it's a travel log as well.
She actually interwoven all the characters together in the book, didn't she?
Yes, she did. And people that hated each other at the beginning, actually, they all warmed to each other, and they all changed. There was a massive transition for all of them during that journey.
That's a Borderline by Hilary Custance Green, and it's from Threadgold Press.
That's right, and it's £8.50, which is a great read, a great price, and wonderful.
Well, the second book we reviewed during the year was The Wheel's Final Turn by Monica Brinkman.
That's right, and this was a sequel to a book, The Turn of the Karmic Wheel, and actually I had that a couple of weeks ago, so I said I'd read that over the holiday, and maybe we can review that early next year, JP. But it's a very good story. I mean, it's quite violent. It's, again, intermingles the characters who are very different, totally different, and what can I say, one's a wood carver, one is a governor, a state governor in America, one is an animal torturer, so they're all quite odd characters and horrific characters. Well, they all meet at the end, if I can try to explain it like that, but the governor, he's well into it, but he's done all sorts of devious things, and literally The Wheel's Final Turn, it leaves you with just 3 characters at the end because they wanted to rid the world of bad people, and the way they went about it was quite horrific and quite torturous. But it was a good book, and as I said to you when we did the original review, I said I'd like to read the first book to see how it got to where it did and how she was able to finish the first book, maybe not even knowing she was going to write the second one. I don't know. I should be interested to read it. But yeah, it's a very good read. It's very different. You can do it in one sitting almost. It's not a huge book. It's just looking at a number of pages here. Yeah, it's only got 100, 110, 111 pages. So that's not a huge book, but it's a very good read, and it's something that's very different. I've not read anything like it before. Depends what the prequel's like, but I'll be interested to read that and just see what's what. We did also comment on the front cover, which is this lovely old antique water wheel, isn't it? There's
Yeah,
one
that's
near
right.
us, Dawlish, and it's just like that. It's a good cover.
Yeah. The chapters are very short in the book, though, being only 110 pages, isn't it?
Yeah, some of the chapters are literally a page and a half, 2 pages. When I write, I try to make a chapter about 6 pages. That's 6 sides, about 6 pages, because I'm mindful that people, if they're reading in bed, they don't want to sit there and read 20, 30 pages of a chapter or thumb through it, because it will put them off it. Now, her chapters are very short. Of course, what she's doing, it's one here that's just a page, actually, chapter 8. What she's doing, of course, is setting the scene for, the final countdown, if you like. So I can see why she's doing it, and she's written it. The chapter layout's almost filmic, how it would be in a film where you go from one scene to the next, and hence the short pages, really, or short chapters.
Yeah, there's one chap in there in the book, because we're not going to go in great depths of it. Yared Williams, on the review, he had a blue Stratocaster. He called it blue.
Yes, he did. You're dead right. His father didn't want him to play it, but he did play it in the end. Of course, that's his fate at the end, because a horrible character in it, on Nemesis, he actually rigs that guitar up so that it literally electrocutes the player, which is very, very sad. But I didn't suss that at the beginning. All I knew was that he loved that guitar, and he knew, of course, that he would actually, the Nemesis knew that the protagonist would be playing it at some point, and therefore, and he does it at a big launch, which is in front of lots of people. So smoke does rise, if you know what I mean.
Yes, it does. Well, that's The Wheel's Final Turn by Monica Brinkman. It's I'm just trying to see who.
Published by All Things That Matter Press.
Oh, that's
and
right.
It's £10.45.
Now the third one and the final one for this month, it's the Beatles. It's a message from John, Paul, George and Ringo.
Yes, and this book, it was a pleasure to read. I mean, I read it obviously months ago, but we did talk, and you talked about it last night, the Beatles programme that was on last week, the top 20 hits voted by ITV viewers, I believe, and it was because Hey Jude was the winning one. I don't like, unlike you last night, you faded it out well before the end, because I find the end quite boring, and it's too repetitive. Really. My wife loved it. She said, no, I like the whole thing, but I find it quite repetitive. But this book is quite unique. And the gentleman who wrote it is a guy called Chris Hutchins, or Crispy Hutch, as John Lennon called him.
That's right, yeah.
But he was asked to go and interview them when they were in Hamburg. They already had the hit record, and they were booked to play at the Star Club for the final time. They already had the hit record. I think Love Me Do was sort of in the lower ends of the charts, but they'd still been booked to do a month at the Star Club, where they played several times. And Chris Hutchins was asked by the NME to go over and spend some time with them, which he did. And he built up quite a rapport with them, more so with John Lennon than anyone. But as a result of going over to Hamburg to see them, he actually was with them a lot of the time when they were on the road. And one of his claims to fame, as well as working with the Beatles and putting this book together, he actually got them to meet up with Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley wanted to meet them, but he didn't really ask to see them. They wanted to meet Elvis, but didn't want to be asked. So what Crispy Hutch did is he eventually got in touch with Colonel Parker, who was Elvis's manager, and wangled it. So they went to Graceland, ended up having a jam with Elvis Presley, who played guitar with them. It was great, but it's a lot of, for Beatles fans, and this is why I've left this one until last, for Beatles fans, people who love what they did, where they've been and everything else, this is a book that is a must-have to go with all your other books and memorabilia you might have at home, because it's an insight into them as they were when they were with someone who, again, was learning his art as a journalist. So no holds barred, but I think it's great. There's some wonderful photos in here.
Well, that's the Beatles. Messages from John, Paul, George and Ringo. It's Neville Ness House?
Neville Ness House, yeah, publishing. I mean, Chris Hutchins, Crispy Hutch, has written lots of books. He's written about Harry, Diana, Roman Abramovich. He's written lots of books, but this is a music book, which is great, and that's his first love. It's $8.99 from Neville Ness House, and it's a great present for Christmas. Some of the photos in there are photos that I've not seen before as well, which is always a nice thing to do, because we all see the same photos recycled time after time after time. And there is a lovely one here, which is a very famous photo with George Harrison, Stu Sutcliffe, and John Lennon in their leather jackets sat on the old lorry. And that was taken in Hamburg by Astrid, of course. Also a Little Richard. But yeah, they're the boys. That's the book for musicians, people who love the Beatles, love music. I think Messages from John, Paul, George and Ringo is the music one. And the other two, great for anyone who reads. You know, they're very, very good books.
Okay, that's all three then, Graham. We're going to look at books for January.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I've got one here. I mean, I've got a couple actually, so I'll sit down and read those over the holiday.
Okay, Graham, we'll speak to you next month then.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.